Golden State Media Concepts Sci-Fi Podcast. Together we dive into the world of sci-fi and science fiction. From episodes of Star Trek, Star Wars, to The Walking Dead, Resident Evil, all the hot new science fiction movies from the back doors of Marvel or DC. The Golden State Media Concepts Sci-Fi Podcast. You'll never look at science fiction the same way again.
Welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts Science Fiction Podcast. Today we are focusing mostly on zombies. We're going to talk a little bit about Dawn of the Dead, and we're going to talk about some crossovers that may or may not happen.
Not going to happen.
Yeah, it's actually some pretty bad news.
Probably, most likely, 99.9% not going to happen.
Yeah, but who knows with Hollywood.
Yeah. Well, for the first one was something that kind of sparked up a little bit at the New York Comic Con with Kate Beckinsale. So she had in a way, mentioned and made people think that there would be a crossover with Blade and the Underworld, which, I mean, wouldn't have been a bad idea. But
I don't know. I don't feel like the lores match.
True. Yeah.
They kind of do, but they kind of don't. Right. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. And so people were like, ooh, that's exciting. How's this going to work out? Mm-hmm. It could work. It could not work, but we're interested. But, of course, that was actually shot down by Kevin Feige quite quickly after that came about. And so he did say that, I quote, "No, we will do something with Blade at some point." That's still the answer. So there's going to be something again with Blade. Yes. But not that type of a crossover.
So Marvel's kind of been doing some interesting things lately. They have shown Ghost Rider in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., mm-hmm. and they've been talking about doing something with Blade. Whether or not he's getting another reboot, I really hope not. Or what's going on, we don't know. So, I guess people have kind of always talked about, like, maybe there being a Blade and Underworld crossover. Uh-huh. And people have always kind of thought that might be a good idea. I don't really know how I stand personally on that. Like, I feel like the lore of Blade and the lore of Underworld clash a little too much for it to be a good crossover, unless they, like, literally crossed universes. Because the vampires in Blade aren't affected by crosses or anything. Right. They're actually affected by silver, and mm-hmm. in Underworld, silver has nothing to do with them. There is kind of similar concepts with, like, the vampire cult type thing, and right. I don't think werewolves exist in the Blade universe, but who knows? I feel like if Blade were to get dropped inside, like, the Underworld universe, then he'd just kill everybody. Yeah. Right. It was kind of one of those things. There was a big joke back in the day about, and we talked a little bit about how there may be a new Twilight movie coming out, but there was a big joke back in the day about dropping Wesley Snipes' Blade into the Twilight franchise and just having him murder everybody. Yeah.
I wouldn't be mad about that one.
I would love that.
I would watch that, yeah.
Blade versus Twilight. I think that would be a fun crossover.
Oh, that would be...
Now, I don't really see, unless it's in, like, comic books, I don't really see Marvel doing a whole lot of crossovers with their content and somebody else's. One of the things you have to keep in mind, too, is that Blade is owned by Marvel and Underworld isn't. And when you get two companies mm-hmm. kind of clashing for something like that, it kind of becomes... It doesn't really work, you know? They both have their own self-interest at heart. Now, speaking of crossovers that'll never happen... Bruce Campbell has officially said that Freddy versus Jason versus Ash will never happen.
Freddy versus Jason versus Ash.
I feel like, so back in the day, there was Freddy versus Jason, which I actually really enjoyed. I feel like it was a good film. Not a good film, but it's a fun film. If you're looking for a little bit of action, a little bit of lighthearted, like serial killer violence type thing. Like if you're looking for
serial killer violence.
Yeah,
okay.
it's a slasher film, but it feels more like an action film. Like it's really not that scary. It was actually surprisingly kind of decent. Like I actually enjoyed the film, to be perfectly honest, and I wasn't expecting to. I was expecting it to be garbage. Mm-hmm. Now, they've always talked about there being a Freddy vs. Jason 2.
Right.
Because at the end of Freddy vs. Jason, Freddy has Jason's head, but then no. Jason has Freddy's head and Freddy winks at the camera.
Right. So which would make me feel that too.
Yeah. We've always kind of thought, there might be a sequel, but it never came out, probably for the better. Now, Bruce Campbell, like, they had talked in the past about maybe doing a Freddy vs. Jason versus Ash. And I think Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell were on board with that. And so they actually recently just asked him, Reddit AMA, Ash versus the Evil Dead. They were doing kind of an interview with him. And he said, and I quote, "I will be honest with you, I'm not real interested in crossovers. One of the main reasons why Ash versus Jason versus Freddy did not come to pass is because we couldn't control any other characters other than Ash, and we felt that was a creatively bankrupt way to go. Not to mention you're splitting the proceeds 3 ways, which you might not want."
Right.
And just in general, I don't know if I think Ash would really fit so well in the Freddy versus Jason type universe type thing. Like, I don't really feel like it fits together. Because Freddy versus Jason, those are slasher films.
Right.
And Ash is an unlikely protagonist in the Evil Dead series. If you're not familiar with the Evil Dead series, you should go check it out. It's pretty good. The first Evil Dead, they meant it to be serious. This was like Sam Raimi's first project. Mm-hmm. They made the film for $30,000. And it was supposed to be taken seriously, but nobody took it seriously. Like,
right.
It's actually really funny if you really think about it. And then the second one, they realized what they had and turned it into kind of more of a comedy. And then the third one, they took out a lot of the horror element and made it more of a comedy than anything. It's the third one is Army of Darkness. A lot of people are more familiar with Army of Darkness than they are with Evil Dead. In fact, when that movie came out, my dad didn't even know it was part of the Evil Dead series. Like, he thought it was its own
something
thing.
Different. Yeah,
I remember like him telling me when I was talking to him about Evil Dead, he's like, "Yeah, I didn't like those movies." And then I talked to him about like Army of Darkness later. He's like, "Yeah, that's the best movie." And I'm like, "You realize they're the same thing, right?"
Right.
And he's like, "Oh." Actually, one time we actually watched them all in order. I first saw Evil Dead when I was 12 or 11. Mm-hmm. My friends had them on VHS, and so we did a marathon. Cute. And I actually didn't care for Army of Darkness as much as I cared for the other ones at first, and now it's kind of grown on me as we've gone. And the Ash versus the Evil Dead series is actually surprisingly good. I was not expecting it to be as good as it was. I'm currently watching it right now. We talked about it a little bit on the television podcast, and I really enjoy that series. I know Sam Raimi's behind it, and I know Bruce Campbell's behind it, but like, I didn't think that it would be able to hold up as long as it has and still maintain value, because you can only do so much with Ash. He's not really a three-dimensional character. He's just kind of a sexist pig who has a chainsaw for a hand. But surprisingly, it's a pretty good show. Sam Raimi has always impressed me. I love his work. So, they also have talked about in the past that they wanted to do... So the new Evil Dead came out a couple years ago, and I didn't think it was that bad. It was kind of a new take on it. It was a little bit more horror-oriented instead of joke-oriented.
Right.
And then there was a female that took the role of Ash. And at the end of the movie, she didn't chop her hand off or anything, but at the end of the movie, she finishes off the bad guy and all this and that and the other thing. And there has been talk, and these are just rumors, that eventually the new Evil Dead and the old Evil Dead will like join forces. Like something will happen to where, and we don't know if it's going to be in the show or if they're going to make an Evil Dead 2, like a newer Evil Dead. Right. I don't know. I don't even know if this is even like a real thing. Like, it's something that's been talked about. And I always hear it amongst I always hear it amongst Evil Dead fans. Right. But I've never heard anything officially about it. So we'll see.
It could just be wishful thinking.
And I feel like with a lot of crossover movies, the Blade one and the Bruce Campbell one, just in general, I feel like a lot of it is just wishful thinking. If they were to take Bruce Campbell and have him play a different character and have him go up against Freddy versus Jason, I think that would be cool. if they could ever get the rights. At one point, if you haven't seen it, you should check it out. There's a movie called My Name is Bruce, where Bruce Campbell plays Bruce Campbell, and he has to go save a town. Have you seen that movie?
I haven't seen that movie, but I've heard of it, and
it's hilarious.
Right, I've seen the trailer. It does actually look really funny.
He plays himself, and this town thinks that he is, this like killer of monsters because of all of his B movies. Right. And then he has to go and fight. It's the Lord of Bean Curd. Like the Chinese it's the Chinese Lord of Bean Curd.
How funny.
So there, Bruce Campbell works a lot with the Raimi family. Ted Raimi works with him a lot too. Ted Raimi did he did Xenon Warrior Princess and Hercules, and in both of those series, Bruce Campbell is in both. Right. So, yeah, Bruce Campbell is really good friends with the Raimi family, and hopefully, they got him started. Hopefully, we'll see some more stuff with him soon. I love Bruce Campbell, and when we get back, we're going to talk to you guys about Dawn of the Dead.
Yes.
Coming up on a break.
Want to find out what movies to go see? Then check out the GSMC Movie Podcast. It's your ticket to the latest movies, whether it's a new blockbuster event, romantic, comedy, or action flick. This show has got it all covered. They talk some what to go see now, don't bother, what's hot on Netflix, and everything in between. That's GSMCpodcast.com/movie-podcast. When it's all about the movies, it has to be this new show. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the Golden State Media Concepts Science Fiction Podcast. And because we are rude hosts, we did not introduce ourselves.
My apologies. I got excited.
He's so excited. So I'm Pauline.
And I'm Shay Northrup.
And we wanted to start off this segment discussing kind of like zombies. Like, we're going to talk about zombies a little bit. And I had the wonderful opportunity to watch Dawn of the Dead.
Oh, my favorite.
Which directed by George A. Romero. And if you have seen Dawn of the Dead, which, I mean, if you haven't, that's okay too. But I mean, I think you should watch it because now I'm sold on it. But there's also, it's part of like an official trilogy with Night of the Living Dead as well as Day of the Dead.
Yes. So Dawn of the Dead is in the middle. So it goes like Night of the Living Dead.
Then it's
and then
the
10
Dawn.
years later, he made Dawn of the Dead. And then he made Day of the Dead.
So you get it? You guys gonna get it? If you guys didn't know, it makes sense.
Yeah. Just a little bit.
So I got the opportunity, of course, like I said, to watch Dawn of the Dead, which honestly, I was kind of halfway about it before watching the movie because my dad and Shay were like super hyped about it, and they were like, yes, watch this. And then my mom was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're gonna actually watch this. And then Shay gave me the DVD to watch at home, and my mom was like, you actually are really gonna watch this? And I was like, yes, I'm actually really gonna watch this. And she usually watches a lot of stuff with me and things like that, so she was like, this one you're gonna have to talk to your dad about because I'm not sitting through this. And I was like, all right, I get it. And
your mom's funny.
Yeah. No, she's a lot. She was just like, do not expect me to watch this with you. And I was like, okay, like I get it. And so I got kind of apprehensive because I was like, I like action and I'm okay with like blood and things like that. But because my mom normally is like okay-ish with it, for her to just say like, no, not at all, I was like kind of apprehensive. But then my dad, he was just like, oh, you're fine. Like, you're fine. We can watch this. It's not that big of a deal. So some things that I saw in there, because now with zombie movies, of course, like with everything, things evolve and stuff like that. But one thing that I really liked about Dawn of the Dead which, I mean, this is going to be kind of gross, but like, okay, so like one of the zombies, it's kind of early on in the movie. He bites like a chunk out of the lady's neck, the side of her neck. I don't know why, but I really like that visual. Like,
The special effects are done by Tom Savini, who is like renowned for his.
It was
like, gore.
really, yeah.
It's really good.
Yeah, it literally looked like he was biting a chunk of meat out of this woman's neck, and which I mean, I guess it's kind of gross, but it looked cool.
It's metal.
If that's like, if it's okay to say that biting somebody's neck off looked cool, and then he bites like her arm and things like that, and so I was like, okay, I really like the effects of this movie, and I like that. They were like, I know that zombies are supposed to be like cannibals and things like that, but they actually showed it, and right away showed it, you know, and I like that. And then there's other scenes where there's some zombies like feasting on like limbs and things like that, and it looks like he's holding like a gigantic turkey leg, and he's just like going for it and things like that. And so I was like, okay, like I get it. But then one thing that I noticed that was a difference in zombie movies that I've seen that are more recent, the speed of the zombies.
Yeah, that's something that's changed over time. We'll talk about that a little bit later.
Right, yeah. That was definitely one thing that I noticed that was different from like modern day zombie movies and this zombie movie. But overall, I greatly enjoyed it. I thought it was a really good movie. I could see why some people who are like queasy stomachs don't like it because it shows like everything, which I mean, I thought was kind of cool though.
Yeah, so this is a film directed by George A. Romero, and I'm a bit of a George A. Romero purist. Dawn of the Dead has been remade, as well as Day of the Dead. I think Night of the Living Dead's even been remade, and all the remakes are terrible. Don't even bother. Except for, actually, I take that back. The Dawn of the Dead remake by Zack Snyder is actually pretty good. Like, I feel like the Zack Snyder remake is pretty good. I don't think it should have been called Dawn of the Dead, but I did enjoy it. Now, it's important to note that in the history of zombie movies, George A. Romero changed them completely, because zombies before were a thing of voodoo. Usually,
right.
You know, it was like you get hit by voodoo powder, and then you become like not necessarily a cannibal, but usually you were like a slave, like to the person. You're like you had a master, or some of them did eat human flesh. It depended on the movie. But this one, in Night of the Living Dead, it was a meteor that hit, and they actually don't use the word zombie once, like not once in Night of the Living Dead. And so a meteor hits, and then the dead start to walk.
Right.
That movie is great. I'm not going to go too far into it because we are here to talk about Dawn of the Dead, but it even has some like really cool racial implications because the main character of the movie is black, and there's some things that happen in the movie that like are kind of a race issue, and I kind of enjoyed that George A. Romero added that in a time when that wasn't necessarily a popular thing to talk about. Now in Dawn of the Dead, which I believe was released in 1979, Dawn of the Dead, some people think takes place after Night of the Living Dead, a little bit after, so zombies have been around for a little bit. It starts in kind of a weird way. Like, there's some themes in the movie that I really enjoyed. Like, one of the things in the beginning of the movie, there's a police, like, SWAT team that goes through this house, and they're killing these guys, and they're fighting.
Like a raid,
and when I first watched it, I was really confused as what was going on. And then you find out later that, like, these people consider the dead to be still their family, so they keep them in cages. And they're doing a raid to get rid of all the zombies because they're trying to get rid of all the zombies. And
that's actually why that woman's neck got like she encountered that zombie who ended up biting her, was because she still loved him and viewed him as, like how you said, family. And she actually went and like embraced him, which when you're watching the movie and like the police officers at that time, they're like, what is she doing? Like, you know, because it's like it's a zombie and like he's going to attack you and things like that. And that's kind of like threaded within the movie the entire time, is whether or not they're still like people. Right.
Well, one of the things too that they mentioned, one of the characters mentions like that they go to places that they were happy. You know, where
and like
they
memories
remember.
And things
There's
like
little
that.
memories that they have and things like that. And that actually plays really big into the climax of the movie. I'm not going to spoil it. But also, this movie has some of the most iconic lines in zombie movie history. Like I said, I'm a bit of a George A. Romero purist when it comes to zombie movies. Like, his movies are the best. Now, like, one of the things, like, no more room in hell. There's no more room in hell.
Yes.
That's one of the lines that people quote often.
All the time when it comes to...
In Dawn of the Dead, the character mentions, you know, she's like, what do you think caused all of this? And he's like, well, you know, there's an old thing in like that my grandma used to tell me, that's when there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk. And that's something that's been kind of like, it's the kind of thing that, you know, like horror movie fans, like, you know how like white women will paint on their wall like live, laugh, love. Zombie horror movie like zombie fans will paint that like on their wall in those little embroidered, you know.
The dead
that kind
will
of
walk.
thing.
Right.
So, and then like if you haven't seen Day of the Dead, I would highly recommend Day of the Dead. Day of the Dead has a different kind of approach. Some scientists are trying to do stuff to make the zombies like learn. They're trying to make them more human. So they actually get like a pet zombie type thing named Buddy, who like has basic motor functions and can say basic things, which is actually kind of cool. That's kind of been a theme that's been stolen in a lot of zombie movies.
I agree.
And then there's kind of this whole military versus the scientists. The scientists are trying to make everything better. The military just wants to survive.
Yeah.
So there's a big like kind of fight between the two, and it's kind of cool. Like I think Day of the Dead is probably the least aesthetically pleasing of the movies because they're underground most of the time. Like they're in cement walls and stuff like that throughout most of the movie. But it's probably one of the more philosophical ones. Now, these movies are kind of like... It's almost like each of these movies kind of tell you a little bit about society and how society works.
Right.
Whereas a lot more of modern zombie movies are kind of just more about, oh, let's go get some beer and guns and kill
there's
some
just like
zombies
and just, there's not, I agree.
Yeah, so what would you like... So on the television podcast, we're starting to rate things on a 1 to 5 scale.
Okay.
What would you rate this from 1 to 5?
On Dawn of the Dead?
Yeah.
Oh, enjoy. Well, I was actually pretty surprised myself because I actually was enjoying the movie, which my mom would probably cringe. My dad would applaud.
Yeah. It's a good movie.
Because, again, like how you were saying, like there's a story, like there's more of a story to it. And it does also, I think, because I was thinking that too, that it was kind of addressing subtly other issues as well. And so I did actually like it. So honestly, but see, I like all the blood and stuff too.
Yeah, no, it's a good ensemble of things.
Kind of, I don't know. I don't want my mom, I know she listens to this, so I don't want her to break her heart, but I will give it a solid 4.5.
I give this movie a 5.
Because I actually was enjoying it, and I want to watch the rest, the others as well, and things like that. And I think, it did help that I did watch it during the day. Like I watched it really early in the morning. I actually watched it at 9 o'clock in the morning. So I watched it first thing when I woke up and things like that. And I'll give it a solid 4.5 because I really did enjoy it. And I think that I would enjoy the others as well. And if I were to watch all of them, I'd probably give them all a 5. I could see why you do enjoy all. A total 5, and I think also if you compare it, honestly,
it's a little dated though. Like
it is a little dated,
but that's not a problem.
But not too bad to where you can't enjoy it.
Yeah,
and some of the stuff I did like more than things that we get today.
Oh,
because
definitely.
It really, like I said, like it looked like he bit a chunk of meat out of this woman's neck and things like that. So I did like a lot of the visuals as well.
Yeah. Well, and the movie itself, one of the things that I really enjoy, and I think every horror movie needs to do this to some extent, there's a lot of comic relief in between. I don't know. Yeah, there's a lot of like the zombies doing dumb things. Or
the zombies. And I was, because the zombies are people, like they're real actors. And so I kind of like that because on some of the parts I was thinking somebody's actually like, just spinning in a circle.
Well, and there's like
going so slow.
There's the Hare Krishna zombie, the one in the robe, and he's got the tambourine.
Yes, and they have a bunch of different lifestyles depicted.
There's a lot of personality.
Yes.
Like there's one part where like one of the zombies like grabs one of their guns and holds it throughout the whole movie. And like so he's this zombie that's just walking around with a gun. At the end of the movie, he goes and attacks one of the guys. And the other guy, like he grabs onto the guy's gun. And the guy just lets go of his gun, and the zombie, instead of being focused on like getting brains or whatever, he's just like, ooh, looking at the gun, like holding it, and he's like, It is. So there is some parts that are really funny, and music too.
The music, and there was one part where I thought it was funny because I was thinking this in my head too. Yeah. But like, you know how like when you're watching movies, especially scary movies, you're like run or like duck, like like you're kind of like yelling at the screen too. Well, there's one part of the movie where they're on opposite ends of like the hallway, I believe it is, and it's when they're in the shopping mall.
Yeah.
And they're one guy is like the zombies are going towards him, right? And they're walking slow and all of this, and there's maybe like 5 or 6 filling the hallway, and then his friend, the other police officer, is at the opposite end, and he's literally just standing there waiting for the zombies to like come towards him, and then his partner's like, run, like just run, come to me, like run through them. And he's kind of apprehensive to do it, and like in my head I'm like, dude, you could like if you go fast enough you could probably outrun them.
Well, and he teaches, like, one of the characters teaches one of the other characters how to shoot. Like, one of the other characters sucks at shooting. That's another thing that I really enjoy, because one of the things that movies never do, if you're new to guns, you're gonna miss. Yeah. Like, unless you're like taught how to shoot.
I think it's the pilot who sucks at shooting and things like that. Yeah. And so like he has to learn how to shoot. Which is honestly, and I think that's another reason why I like this movie.
I hate when movies you get like a character that just like, what is this? A gun?
And then
just knows how to do it
and that's
instantly.
what my dad and I, we were discussing. We were like saying that it's really, I think that George A. Romero did a really good job of making it like really realistic. Like if this were to happen, there would be some people who would not know what to do and would have to depend on others.
Well, and people
at least
freeze
for, like,
up
backup.
too, you know?
Freeze up,
that sort of thing. Well, we're coming close to a break. I know we want to talk more about this movie. I could talk about this movie for hours. But when we get back, we're going to dive deep into the history of zombie movies. It's one of my favorite genres. It has been tainted in the last couple of years, though. So stick around.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
And we are back on the Golden State Media Concepts science fiction podcast. We're going to talk to you guys about some zombies. Now, before we could really get into the nitty-gritty about what's going on nowadays, we're going to need to talk about the origin. So the first ever zombie movie that was ever made came out in 1932, so there was sound, and it's called White Zombie. And I believe Bela Lugosi was in it. So it came out in 1932. It's based on a novel called The Magic Island. It was 1929. And I feel like this is a really good like example of the first zombie movies. There was basically it's like what zombie is. It comes from like Haiti and African culture, where there's like a powder that like you blow on somebody and it's supposed to like kind of destroy their brain.
Right.
And it basically turns you into a zombie, which is just like, you know, you're kind of like a slave to the master, kind of a thing. Like it's
you don't
voodoo,
really have
you know, voodoo, hoodoo, that sort of thing. And that's how it was up until like the 50s. In the 50s, you started to get some like nuclear fallout zombies, where like kind of ghouls that came from like nuclear warheads and stuff. But still, it was primarily voodoo zombies. And then you got Night of the Living Dead, where a meteor caused them. Since then, the more modern zombies are kind of more from fungal infections or viruses, which is why they move fast. Because back in the day, they were dead, and that's why they moved slow.
Gotcha.
So back in the day, most of the zombies were dead, and how do you move fast with, you know...
When you're dead.
Yeah, it's you've got rigor mortis, right? So you can't move fast. And that was the whole point behind it. And you're like decaying and stuff like that. And there's a lot of history that goes into like why zombies were the way they are as opposed to now. And then like I think it was 28 Days Later was the one where they started moving really fast. Now, if you really enjoy like kind of more campier movies, I think a really good one to check out is Return of the Living Dead, which isn't a part of the Dead trilogy, but George A. Romero was a producer on it. And they actually reference Night of the Living Dead in the movie, but it's more of a comedy. Like there's a scene where like this zombie like goes up to an ambulance and calls up a police station's like, send more paramedics. And so paramedics show up and all these zombies come out of the bushes and kill them.
Right.
And then like later in the movie, he's just like, send some police officers. So they send some police officers and they all get and then like at the end of the movie, he's like, send the whole police force. And so they're all over there and they all get jumped. It's hilarious. It's a great movie. A lot of fun. A lot of jokes. The zombie movie genre in of itself, I think, has become a joke. And it's kind of sad.
It's kind of, yeah.
I would say that when it started becoming a joke, because I've been a fan of zombie movies since I was a young kid. I remember watching Resident Evil, and I've talked some smack about Resident Evil on the show before. But when I saw Resident Evil, this was a new idea to me. Mm-hmm. And I really enjoyed it, and I had to check it out. So then I went and rented Night of the Living Dead, and I started watching all the zombie movies and realized, like, oh my gosh, this is a great genre. Because before, it was a good genre with some bad stuff sprinkled in. Well, now it's become a garbage genre because after the movie, I think I would have to say Zombieland. Zombieland was like the last good zombie movie. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Have you seen Zombieland?
I did. I saw Zombieland multiple times in theaters.
Yeah, it's a good movie. But the problem is now, since that movie's come out, everybody's made a bunch of clones of it. And there's a lot of garbage out there. Like, I'm honestly not a fan of The Walking Dead. I like Z Nation, but I think Z Nation's going in kind of a bad direction. Mm-hmm. Like, most zombie stuff that comes out today is pretty bad. When I was in film school, everybody made zombie movies, and it was kind of annoying.
Yeah, and a lot of things just throw in zombies that aren't really...
I'm kind of waiting for it to die down again, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, it's kind of like the in thing right now.
Yeah, and I feel like it's kind of been dying a little bit, but there's still some things kind of keeping it afloat. I'm kind of waiting for it to die. I had a book that had like every zombie movie from like the first zombie movie to 2008 when I got the book. And it like talked about all of the different movies the guy had seen in depth, and it's pretty much every single one that was ever made that wasn't like low budget and never made it into theaters, like all of the higher ones. And I actually just watched one of the movies from it last night. It was called Hard Rock Zombies. So let me just kind of give you an idea about like some of the things that are in this movie. We've got midget Nazi zombies with eye patches. There's a midget zombie that eats himself. There's like this character who's a really old man that the band meets, and they're staying with their family, their weird Nazi family. Mm-hmm. And like halfway through the movie, he pulls off his mask and says, "I'm Hitler." And then he's Hitler. Like all of a sudden you have Hitler, and then Hitler goes and kills all the members of the band. So basically it's a movie about this rock and roll band from the 80s. So you're going to get some of that really cheesy, bad 80s hair metal and it, like power ballads and stuff. And the characters go to this town where like they're kind of hickish and they don't like him.
Right.
And so like Hitler and his Nazis, and his wife is a werewolf for some reason.
Wow.
That can change on to call. Like this movie has everything.
Yeah.
Like they kill them and then they come back to life and kill all the Nazis. So then the Nazi zombies go around and kill everybody in the town, and then they have to stop them.
That does have a little bit of everything.
It's got pedophilia, necrophilia. It's got like old people sex going on in it. Nazi zombies, Nazi midget zombies, zombie Hitler.
I like it.
It's got everything. It is terrible, but it kept getting really funny. There was even like a homoerotic montage. Like,
I don't like it.
It was really funny. Like the band's doing this montage of like jumping on the car and being all like funny and everything, and like it was very homoerotic and kind of, the movie was hilarious. Like it kept cutting like halfway through the movie, like at a certain point one of the zombie midgets, it kept cutting to them chopping pieces of itself off and then eating them, and then the scene would end.
Ew.
There was like this scene where like the zombie band is all sitting inside the van and they're listening to music, and one of them kicks the radio and it changes and they look at each other, and then they kick the radio again and some really crappy synth music comes on and they like nod, they're like yeah, and then that's the end of the scene. Like there are a bunch of random, it seems like it was just all thrown together, and unfortunately with zombie movies you get a lot of that kind of stuff
getting it thrown together.
It's just a lot
too
of
much stuff mixed in.
Well, that's every movie, but a lot of times you get a lot of like, oh, we're going to be funny and campy, and it turns out to just be garbage. There's a lot of good stuff out there, though. Like, if you check out, like, the Romero movies, those are perfect. 28 Days Later is probably one of my favorite movies of all times. 28 Weeks Later is okay. Zombieland, of course, is good. And there's a lot of stuff out there that's good. Like, Idle Hands, you could consider a zombie movie, and I love that movie. Now, that's about all the time we have for the show. Where can they find us, Pauline?
You can find us on our network website, which is gsmcpodcast.com, as well as on iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud, and Stitcher. We are also on Twitter and Facebook. So if you have seen any of these movies that we've discussed or any shows that we've discussed and you like them, you hate them, you love them, or if you never tried it and you want to watch it now, I suggest to go watch some really good older zombie movies. I think
there's some okay ones that come out. Like, what was it? There was Dead Snow. Dead Snow was pretty good.
So, you have been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Science Fiction Podcast. I'm Pauline.
And I'm Shay Northrup.
Keep it saucy.
Oh, man.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sci-Fi Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.